I want to start by removing the wheel. I'm going to use a little pry bar and just very gently pry the hubcap off. Of course, if you don't have this, then don't worry about it. There we go. Hold it because it likes to go flying. Set that aside, and then with a 21mm socket, remove all 5 of your lug nuts and then remove the wheel. Towards the front, there's a little 10mm bolt that holds on the e-brake cable. I actually want to remove this so I can get more slack out of the cable. A lot of times these break, so be careful with them. There we go, now we have more slack. With a 14mm socket, let's remove these 2 bolts that hold the caliper onto the bracket. There's one. Number 2. Pull the caliper right off. Sometimes if you press it on the piston side, that'll compress the piston just a smidge. And I just want to get this up and out of the way for now. Let's continue by removing the pads. 2 more 14mm bolts right here. Just going to break these free by hand first, and then I'll get my air gun in here. Okay, remove your caliper bracket, set it aside, and remove the rotor. Next, with a 14mm socket, go through these holes in the hub and remove all 4 bolts. Before we go too much further, let's disconnect the ABS sensor. Okay, looks like this piece comes off, and then you can pry underneath on the locking tab and gently pull this out. Sometimes needle-nose pliers can help. Try not to break it. There it is, it's coming off. A lot of times these get gummed up with sand, so you gotta be careful. And there it is, unplugged. All right, now let's remove the bearing. And now use a hammer and kind of just tap this wheel bearing, walk it off, hit it from both sides. Bigger hammer. There it is. I guess I didn't hold it well enough. There's your bearing and the backing plate. At this point, it's important to clean up inside here. That way the new wheel bearing has a nice flat area to sit on. I'm just going to use this cutting disc. It's not the best thing to use in here, but basically I just want to remove all the rust chunks and the debris and everything. Make sure this surface right here is also clean, nice and flat. I'm just going to put a tiny bit of anti-seize on this surface where I cleaned it up, just so I don't get as much rust buildup, hopefully, in the future. And just cover the bare metal that I exposed. Why not a little bit on here to help prevent the bearing from sticking, although if it's going to stick, it'll stick inside of this groove here. Okay, that looks good. Let's get the new bearing in. All right, so take the backing plate, make sure it's going the right way with the cutout for where the caliper goes. Push this out of the way, line up the bolt holes just like that, and then slide the wheel bearing in. It should slide in with no problem if you cleaned it up well enough. And then grab your bolts and just start them in by hand. That way you can let go of the bearing and it'll actually stay in place. Okay, that one's in. Let's do the other 3. Let's snug them all up. I'm going to go in a cross pattern. That way the wheel bearing seats itself evenly. All right, let's torque them to 66 foot-pounds. Again, I'm going to go in a cross pattern. Let's plug this in. Make sure it clicks, and then don't forget about that little cover for the wire. Close it over this connector. Let's apply anti-seize to the inside of the hub area here, or the hub surface, I guess. This will help rust from not building up in the future. It'll help the rotor not to stick. Grab the caliper bracket, slide it over the rotor, line it up with the 2 bolt holes, and start in your 2 bolts. Once those are started, bottom them out and then torque them to 42 foot-pounds. Now let's get the pads on. I like to put the pad with the wear indicator on the drag side. So basically as the rotor's spinning forward like this, it's going that way and it's dragging this wear indicator up and therefore making noise. If you put it on the bottom like it was when I took off, it would actually be jamming it into the brake rotor or into the pad and not making any noise for you. So I think on the top is the way to go for this. So slide this on. Your pads should slide on easily. If they don't, that means you didn't clean up the bracket enough. Okay, there we go. Moves around easily, that's perfect. The outer pad does not get a wear indicator. Now grab your caliper, slide it over the pads, make sure it goes over the slider pins. Tap it on. Let's get the 2 bolts and bolt it up. Start the top first, it'll be easier. And then you can pivot the bottom into place. Torque these to 25 foot-pounds. Don't forget to put back the parking brake cable with this little 10mm bolt. Let's get the wheel back on. Start on all 5 of your lug nuts, snug them up, and torque them to 76 foot-pounds. Put the hubcap back on if you have one. Make sure you line up this slot with the valve stem. Where is it? Right there. Otherwise it will get crushed. Putting these on can be tricky because they usually want to pop off in other places as you put them on. There we go. Got it. All right. Take it for a road test.